The Dark Tale of Hansel and Gretel. What really happened in the forest. Once upon a time, in a cold and crumbling corner of a forgotten land, there lived a boy and a girl, Hansel and Gretel. But unlike the sanitized versions passed down in children's books, their story was never meant for young ears. This was a tale soaked in hunger, betrayal, and something far darker than a wicked witch. The village they called home was dying. Crops failed season after season. Livestock grew sick. The air was thick with the scent of rot. People whispered that the land was cursed, that something ancient beneath the soil was stirring. But in the tiny wooden shack at the edge of the woods, none of that mattered to Hansel and Gretel. All they knew was hunger. Their stepmother was a bitter woman. Her eyes were sunken, her words cruel. She looked at Hansel and Gretel not as children, but as burdens. One night, when the fire had died and the siblings lay awake shivering, they heard her voice through the thin walls, low and sharp, slicing through the silence like a knife. "We cannot feed them anymore," she said. "Tomorrow, we take them deep into the forest and leave them there. Let the darkness do what we cannot." Their father said nothing, but Hansel had heard everything. That night, while the house slept, he slipped outside, gathering white stones by moonlight. He knew the forest better than most, better than he wanted to. There were stories whispered by old men around dying fires, stories of shadows that moved even when the wind was still. Of eyes watching from the trees. Still, he filled his pockets. The next day, just as the stepmother promised, they were led into the forest. The deeper they went, the quieter the world became. No birdsong. No wind. Just the crunch of footsteps and the uneasy beat of their hearts. At a clearing, the stepmother stopped. She told them to rest. That she and their father would return shortly. They never did, but Hansel had a plan. He had dropped the white stones along the path. When the moon rose high, its pale light lit the trail, and they followed it home. The stepmother was furious when she saw them, as if she'd seen a ghost. But she smiled through clenched teeth. The next night, she locked the door. This time, Hansel couldn't gather stones. But he had bread. He crumbled it into pieces and dropped them as they walked, deeper than before, where even the trees seemed to whisper secrets, but the forest was hungry too. The birds had eaten the crumbs. There was no path home. They wandered. For hours. For days. The woods were endless, twisted in on themselves like a maze designed by a mad god. Hunger clawed at their bellies. Sleep became a dangerous thing. Whenever they closed their eyes, they heard things. Voices. Laughter. Screams, and then, as if summoned, they found the house that it stood crooked and sagging, but intact. The walls were covered in something sticky and sweet, and in the fading light, the children mistook it for candy. Gingerbread. Sugar. Frosted windows and a roof of icing, but this was no fairy tale cottage. The sweets were rotted. Moldy. The smell was overpowering. And still, they ate, desperation devouring disgust. The door creaked open on its own. Inside was darkness. Deeper than night. The air was thick and warm, like breath. As their eyes adjusted, a voice whispered from the shadows, "You're home." The woman who stepped forward was not what they expected. She was not old. Not young. Her skin was gray, her eyes too large, too black. Her smile split her face like a wound. She spoke softly, lovingly. She offered food, a warm bed, and safety. The children accepted, but the house shifted when they slept. Rooms were never in the same place twice. The windows showed not the forest, but strange images, flickering scenes of other children crying, screaming, vanishing into the dark. Hansel awoke in a cage. The witch, for that's what she truly was, had no need for ovens. No need for boiling pots. She fed on something deeper than flesh. She drank fear. She consumed hope. Gretel was forced to serve, to watch her brother wither as the witch whispered to him, stole from him piece by piece. The witch's whispers were like poison. She told Gretel lies wrapped in truth. That her father never looked for them. That her stepmother laughed when they left. That the forest wanted them. Needed them. That the house had waited centuries for them to arrive. Gretel stopped sleeping. She wandered the ever-changing halls, hearing her name in the creaking floorboards, seeing shapes in the corners. And one night, she found the truth that in a hidden room behind a warped door, she saw them, bones. Hundreds. Piled like firewood. Tiny shoes. Dolls with eyes gouged out. Scraps of clothing with names stitched in faded thread. The witch had fed for generations, but the house had weaknesses. It was alive, yes, but bound to ritual. Bound to rules. Gretel played along. She smiled. She cleaned. She listened. She learned. When the witch demanded that Gretel prepare her brother for the final feast, she obeyed. She led him to the center of the room, a circle marked with runes older than language. Candles flickered with black flame, but as the witch stepped forward, Gretel acted. She recited the words the witch had used. Backward. Twisted. She shattered the ritual. The house screamed, the walls bled, the witch shrieked, her body folding in on itself, eyes melting, limbs snapping. And when she was nothing more than ash and smoke, the cage broke, the house crumbled, the forest groaned. Hansel and Gretel ran, but something followed. They made it out. The forest spat them back into the world. But they were not the same. Their eyes were too hollow. Their dreams too full. They never spoke of what happened. The village celebrated their return. The stepmother had vanished. The father, gaunt with guilt, wept. But Gretel only watched the trees. Hansel only drew strange symbols in the dirt. Years later, the house returned. In a different forest. In a different form. But the same hunger. They say some children still vanish, that candy-sweet smells drift through the air just before dusk, that if you listen closely, you can still hear a voice, soft, loving, whispering from the trees, "You're home."